No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, we're going to be going over number 7 of 8 in our series on leadership theory based on the Monday.com article that you shared almost 2 months ago now on the different theories of leadership. If this is the first time you're tuning in the last 7 weeks, go back and listen to the previous episodes when you have time. You'll learn a lot about yourself and what theories kind of resonate with you versus which ones don't. On this episode, the theory of leadership that I want to talk about is situational leadership theory, which is one that if you are a younger Gen Xer or a millennial, this is probably one that you may have heard more about than other theories of leadership, just based on what the expectations are of leaders in the organizations that you have worked in. Situational leadership in general, kind of at a high level, is kind of the opposite of the contingency theory, which we talked about last week, which, if you don't remember, was this idea that you can't really change who the leader is or how they lead. So instead, the goal is to make sure that you assign the right tasks to that leader based on where they're going to shine and what their strengths are. Situational leadership theory says basically exactly the opposite, which is that there are going to be different tasks and there are going to be different things that a leader is going to be expected to do, and they need to be able to change their leadership style based on the task at hand or the people that they're leading. And I can go either way on this. On the one hand, you could say that there are leaders who don't have the ability to change, and that you need to assign them the right tasks. On the flip side, as time goes on, it's becoming less and less acceptable to just say, "Oh, I can't do that. Give me different tasks." If you're a leader and you are opting in as a leader of people, you need to have some semblance of being able to change who you are based on the task at hand. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's actually something that I've had a good amount of experience with and have gone through some of the actual situational leadership training materials and some of the concepts and theories. And what I appreciate about it is that the understated. Sometimes we talk about like changing your leadership style, and we don't talk about like not changing you as the leader. We're talking about changing how you show up for somebody in a particular context or in a particular space. And there's plenty of things that we could discuss around, like if somebody's going through something like personal and emotional, we would tend to, as leaders, show empathy and listen and provide them with some time and space to go through that, versus other parts of the day when we may be a little bit more directive or a little bit more clear with expectations. So like in life in general, we adjust our behaviors to meet the situation in front of us. And situational leadership, to me, is much of that, but specific to like certain tasks, like things that if you've never done it before. Number one, how do you know how to do it? Are you the type of person that likes to do new things and try new things, and you're like, okay, I've never done this, but I want to learn? Or you're the type of person that says, I've never done this and I don't like to do new things, right? How do you show up as a leader in those types of spaces? And the cool thing about situational leadership, I think, is that it gives you a decent platform on, as a leader, when you're introducing new tasks to a team or to an individual. How are you making sure that you are giving them the leadership behavior they need in the moment? And so if I'm asking somebody to do something for the first time, I probably need to be very descriptive of it, very clear about it, maybe even directive to a degree on what you should do and how you should go about doing it, because they've never done it before. I think that's the proper style of leadership versus just saying, hey, I know you've never done this before, Chris, but you'll figure it out. You're smart, and then walking away, right? That doesn't. While it might be a compliment, and you might say well, that sounds empowering. If you don't know what you're doing, it could also turn into a lot of frustration, and it could turn into you wasting time doing something that you think is right, but you don't actually know is right until I come back and tell you, actually, that's not what I meant, or that's not what I had in mind. And so that can be really, really frustrating.
Yeah, I agree with that. I heard something a long time ago about when a person has failed to do something, it means one of three things are missing, and what those three things are: the head, the heart, and the hands. And I heard that, I've heard that since I was a teenager. And what it basically says is that if an employee fails to do something, what is missing? If it's the head that is missing, then that means that they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the actual skills from a knowledge standpoint or a training standpoint to get something done. If the hands are missing, it means maybe they know how to do it, but they don't have the right tools. Like I can, if I know how to build a house, but all I have is a hammer, I'm still not gonna be able to build the house, no matter how much I know how to do. And then the heart is just, am I into it? Do I actually want to do this or not? And if I have all the tools to build a house and I know how to build a house, but I don't care about building houses, then I'm still not going to get it done. And so if any of those three things are missing, you can give you can give an entire Home Depot and the love of building houses to a person. If they don't know how to do it, they're not going to get it done. Any of these things can be missing. And the situational leadership theory is really similar to that, other than that it combines the head and the hands into kind of one, meaning is the person capable of doing this? And capable could be the knowledge, or it could be the physical tools. Either could be lacking, or both could be there. But the heart part is this willingness. Is the person willing to do this? Are they passionate about it? Are they excited about it? Or are they at least open-minded to it? Right? If a person's never done something before, whether or not they're open-minded can tell you a lot about who they are. Because if you are closed-minded to doing something that you also have never done before, that's different than being closed-minded to doing something that you've done several times before. One says, hey, you know what? I've been down this road and I know what I like, I know what I don't like. Let's work together on how I can get more of what I like in my career versus what I don't like. If I am unwilling to do something and I've never done it before, then that shows kind of like a general kind of an unwillingness to step outside of any type of comfort zone whatsoever, and I just want to do exactly what I'm doing. And those type of people need to be led differently. And I think this is where a lot of leaders can show up when it comes to situational leadership theory. If in my head I'm thinking, well, I've given this person all they need from a tool standpoint, the only thing that's lacking is their willingness to do it, I'm going to write them off, because at the end of the day, they need to bring that. The price of admission to be here is that you actually have to know that you're in a good situation and this is worth it for you, and I'm a go-getter. Like great, that might work for some people, but at the end of the day, if the task still needs to get done and your people are unwilling to do that, even though you've given them all of the tools they need and the knowledge they need, if they are unwilling to do it, one of two things has to happen. Either you need to keep replacing people until you get the right people in place that you don't need to kind of make up for that in them or give them that support, or you need to find a way to support people in a way that helps them get there over time. And sometimes they won't get there no matter how much you give them, then you move on. But a leader's ability and willingness to go through this process can tell you a lot about who they are as a leader and how competent they are as a leader of people.
Yeah, and I think one thing to note as well, in thinking about situational leadership, is like the terminology is high motivation or low motivation, right? And it's low competence or high competence, and I think that's important from a language standpoint, because you can be a positive person willing to learn, like kind of that go-getter attitude, but you can have low motivation for a specific task, especially if you feel like you're nervous about it, you've never done it before. You maybe you're not in a space psychologically where you want to take a level of risk that where you might fail at something. Like there's a lot of reasons that somebody could be from a low motivational standpoint specific to a task. And so what I like about this is that it kind of gives you direction as a leader to say, like, all right, Chris, like, he's doing great work. Chris is doing some really cool things. Chris wants to grow his career. I'm going to ask Chris to go start to have some conversations with people around accountability. And Chris might be like, oh, I definitely want to be a leader. I have low motivation. I want to have those conversations, right? Like it's not something that I know I need to learn. I know I want to learn, but I might be like walking on eggshells and be really, really careful about it. And so in this theory, it starts with a leader, like first on a task for the first time, directing, being highly directive and making sure that you're clear. You can work with them, you can show them examples, you can lead by example, you can role play with them, but just being a high level of directing so that they clearly know what's expected and probably have a good sense of what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. And then the next thing would be coaching. So like once we've done all of that, and once you have maybe tried it a couple of times, now there's an element there where I can spend time coaching you and helping you to refine and helping you with the language or the approach or the preparation, and I'm really kind of coaching you in that space. Then it moves into supporting, which now is more around giving you some space, because now you've done it a few times. You're highly competent. You understand what's going on. Maybe you're okay with having those conversations with this group of employees, but not that group of employees or that particular person or that specific person. Now you might need a different level of support where you know how to do it and you're very clear about it, but maybe you're hitting some roadblocks. Maybe it's a little bit more difficult in certain situations. Now I can kind of be there to be a little bit more supportive, and then it rolls into delegating, which now I can just say, hey, Chris, now I need you to go have these accountability conversations with the team over here or about the specific thing. And we've kind of been through this together where you can do it competently and effectively, and then we can move on to whatever the next task is.
Right. If you're listening right now and you're looking at this chart that Lorenzo just went through, and I'll put a link to it in the podcast description, the thing to keep in mind is that even though they are quadrants, and if you look at the amount of the length of time spent in each one on this chart is the same, as a leader, the length of time that you spend in each one will be different for each person. You might spend a lot more time in one than the others. You might be able to hop right through one of them in a very short period of time based on the progress of the employee on this particular thing. So it's the ability, you as a leader, to spend more time than you may have wanted to spend in one of these quadrants, or be able to move through them more quickly when the employee doesn't need it. And that can be a key thing. There are some leaders who are so good at directing and they're so good at delegating, meaning if you don't know what you're doing and you need me to kind of tell you everything about what needs to be done, then I'm really good there. And if you don't need me for anything besides to just like give me the to-do list, then I'm really good there. Ooh, but what if there's nuance? What if the person doesn't, they kind of know what they're doing, but they need some support, or they're having a bad day today or a rough go about this particular thing, but in general they're good. Now, how do I show up as a leader? And these two middle grounds of supporting and coaching, and how good a leader is at knowing the amount of time that needs to be spent in those particular areas and being able to meet the employee where they are in those two areas. That is the difference between a leader who succeeds here versus one who fails, because spending not enough time there and spending too much time there are both equally detrimental to the relationship between you and the employee. If you're giving too much coaching and too much support and the employee doesn't need it, that's not going to go well. And if you're not giving enough, that's also not going to go well. So there's so much nuance here. So if you're looking at this, again, keep in mind, this isn't like, this is a 4-month process and 1 month is going to be spent in each one. It's not like that. It is absolutely specific to each individual employee.
Yeah, one of the things as well, that's a part of this kind of training in this program, is matching the styles, like looking at where somebody is in a specific space when it comes to a task, and then the leadership style that you apply, where it's like somebody needs high levels of direction and you're trying to delegate the task. Like I said to you earlier,
Sure.
Hey, Chris, you want to be a leader, right? And you're like, uh-huh. Okay, well, you need to be really good at having conversation around accountability. And you're like, yep, it's great. I want you to go have those with the team over there, right? Or spaces where I'm like, hey, Chris, have you ever gone through this type of training with a team member before? And then you're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm really comfortable with it. I've actually done my own trainings before and written my own trainings. And I'm like, okay, great. Here's what I would like for you to do then. First, you need to sit down and make a plan. then you need to, right? Like a high level of direction when I should be delegating to you. Again, that's a mismatch of the style and where the person's at. And so I did want to ask you a question. Have you ever been in a space where you have, it's either happened to you or you've done that to somebody and realized very quickly that like, this is not the right space that we should be in to be most effective?
I've always found myself being kind of hypersensitive to showing up in a way that people don't want, meaning my natural inclination is to think I'm giving the wrong level of support or coaching to somebody, and to constantly being gut checking that and asking. And so this one, it actually works really well for me because to give an example of exactly what you just said, if I were to say I need you to be able to develop this aspect of your own career in terms of being able to deliver trainings to people, have you done this before? And you were to say to me, yeah, I spent years being a corporate trainer for this, and I've delivered these trainings. Like, oh, that's amazing. Like what are some of the, like I would ask questions that would let me validate in my own head that what they were saying was real without it coming off like I was saying, you're lying to me. I'm going to tell you what to do anyway. And so I would work it into the conversation like, tell me about that stuff. I want to hear. And in my head, what the specifics they gave would lead me to believe where it would give me the answer of where I need to fall in the coaching and supporting space for how to get this done. And it may just be, I can go right to delegating. They're solid. They're good to go. Or maybe, and this is what happens a lot of times, is the things that can kind of move from organization to organization when it comes to coaching and training might be a lot of it might be exactly the same, but there's going to be nuance that differs from team to team or from organization to organization. And so maybe the idea of how to put on a training, write a training, deliver a training, I need to spend no time there. I can delegate that aspect of it, but where the support and the coaching needs to be is, okay, now you probably haven't done this for a team like this before. Let's talk about the nuance about how this team shows up, about what this team is looking for. And you can bring your own thing to the table as far as how you do trainings, but let me tell you a little bit about the team itself. Because if you're brand new to the team, then you have zero experience with this team, but a lot of experience doing the coachings and the trainings. And so you could, the task at hand could be, deliver a training to 100 people. There could be micro tasks or individual aspects of that fall into each of these categories, where the delegating is exactly what needs to be done, but another part of that task as a whole, I need to give them more support and coaching on. And if my support and coaching migrates into the how to set up a PowerPoint or keynote presentation, then I'm going to look dumb as a leader. And if my coaching and supporting is, this team has shown repeatedly that they engage better when trainings don't start before 9 a.m. in the morning, so don't try to start at 8 a.m. Well, maybe that's something I can add to the mix of maybe that employee doesn't know how to bring. So yeah, I like the question. I think I'm relatively good at this, almost to the point of maybe even gut checking it too much and not kind of moving on quickly enough.
No, it's a great point. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
The 1 minute hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 minute hack, here's what I want you to do. Get out your pen and paper, and I want you to write down two different scenarios here. I want you to write down a time when you didn't get the right level of support or coaching from a leader. And I also want you to write down, if you are a leader of people or have been one, write down a time when you feel like you tried to give the right level of coaching and support, directing and delegating to an employee, and it didn't go well. I want you to look at these 4 quadrants and write them down and have a look at the chart if you need help seeing what it's supposed to look like, of directing, coaching, supporting, and delegating. And I want you to write down where you feel that the leader with you or you with the employee, where the time was spent in those 4 quadrants versus where it should have been spent. And so you're going to draw 2 different lines here based on what the chart is as written by Blanchard, and figure out how you could have tweaked that line to spend more time where it was supposed to be and less time where it wasn't supposed to be. Think about that when it comes to the accomplishment of anything that you're doing with your people, or when a leader is asking you to do something, and how you can kind of help finesse that relationship in a way that says, I'm going to show up in the right way for my people, or I might even have to help my leader show up in the right way for me. Because if you can articulate this to a leader who's showing up the wrong way with you, it's going to be freeing to that leader, and it's going to help make sure they can show up right for you to be able to say things like, hey, you know what, I'm good here, I'm solid, or this is the part of this that I'm really solid on, but this is the part that I kind of need more coaching or support on. When you can have conversations about this and know what that actually looks like in practice, the accomplishment of the tasks goes so much more smoothly.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1-minute hack and just a good reminder of the importance of awareness as a leader and making sure that we don't just look at the surface or the surface answer and then move forward with a leadership behavior that can cause longer-term frustration, or that we're not, to your point earlier, we're not validating. Not only do they say they know how to do it, but they can express how to do it, or that they're aware of it, or like really kind of like peeling it back a little bit more, spending the time to make sure that you can show up in the right space for them as a leader. I think it's such a critical piece, especially this day and age when people are typically a lot more open to learning things. They're a lot more willing to take a risk on something new. I think a lot of the internet and the access that we have to knowledge and information makes it as that most people are just a little bit more genuinely curious about things they don't know about. Like that, just kind of get that vibe. And so in a lot of cases, while somebody might have an idea about something, or they've seen it, or they've heard it, but they've never actually done it, it's important that we take the time to clarify that, to then be able to really make sure they have what they need from us as leaders.
Yeah, that's so true. I think one of the things that can make or break this when it comes to leaders is this idea that if an employee falls into the unwilling or not open-minded space to doing something, that the response isn't a belief that the employee needs to change. It's the belief that you as the leader need to show up differently if you want that employee to change. And when I see leaders get derailed here, it's because they approach it from the standpoint of, my job is to make sure that this employee has all the tools, that they have all of the knowledge they need, but if they can't bring themselves to want to do it, I can't help them. The moment you say that is the moment you are saying, I don't have the ability to be this person's leader. Leadership isn't necessarily just giving somebody the tools and the knowledge they need to get something done. It's showing up in a way that makes them want to trust you enough to want to at least take a chance on the task, and then you can work together on how that support can show up from you to where maybe this is the right thing for them, maybe it's not, and you'll learn that over the longer time. But if they won't do it to begin with, you can't write them off. If you're writing people off, then you are the issue, not the person.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.